I was hired because the feeling was they were doing a lot of work around putting structure around the automation program, the RPA program, which, as we all know, has got very little to do with machine learning. But the guy in charge of that was continuously coming up against machine learning projects, which were kind of side of desk activities on the most part, what I would call passion projects from developers who were interested because they didn't really have any real permission or any real business cases for what they were doing. And they also had the situation where you'd have senior people who might commission something on a whim, and so they kind of got these kind of two contrasting scenarios. And there was a number of these projects, and the risk was that if any of them failed and got leadership attention, it could cause a sort of disinvestment from other programs associated with automation, which was a major program of work. So what they wanted someone to come in and put, first of all, a strategy around AI, which we're talking about machine learning specifically, but we were using the AI title. And that strategy, needed to help the organization make sure that it was getting, a good return on its investment. And then secondly, to make sure that the right operating model, the right structure is in place to deliver on that. So that's what I was hired ostensibly to do. And, one of the first things I did was try to, first of all, make sense as to what actually did the organization have in place. And so, that was on the face of it, quite an easy task, because we spoke to the teams and the data analytics teams and the people who actually doing the development and people who had been active and proactive on the internal blog and sort of talking about what they were doing. And we were able to uncover 15, 20 projects off the bat. But then it was quite clear that there was a lot of other activity which actually people were less forthcoming about, not because they were up to bad things, but simply because they didn't really have the mandate to do what they were doing. They were experimenting with all the right intentions on the side, hoping to come up with something useful and hoping to get the kudos that would come from this. And so it became more of a challenge to really understand what the organization had in place. So we got to the point where I think we uncovered like 26, 27 initiatives. And I remember doing a briefing for the CTO and for his direct reports, and said, look, here's a map. You imagine like a Venn diagram. I've got all these little circles I'm drawing. I'm saying, now here's all the projects. Here's project 1, here's project 2, here's project 3. Here's project 26. Here's all the projects we're doing today. Here's the machine learning activity that's going on within the firm today. The problem is that, here's another circle. Imagine a Venn diagram with these two circles overlapping. This is what we should be doing. And of course, there's an overlap. There's an intersection between those two. And the question was, we need to go through an exercise to discover what are the things that were really important to the firm, but also what are the things that would be important, but we're not doing yet. That's the most important thing. And all this other stuff is just crap. We just stop it, because we're using people's time, for not for the best purposes. It's not, not bad people. They're not doing bad stuff. They're just, they could be focused on way more valuable things. So that became like the number one thing. I think 6 weeks in, that was very clear from the CTO. We had that mandate to go out and really figure out what should be in that place. And then, we were kind of, I would say, wading through the treacle 2, 3, 4 months later. And we were dealt a gift, and the gift came from the regulator. And gifts never come from regulators. Those of you who work in financial services will learn that, you try and avoid regulatory conversations. They're always full of bad news. But in this case, actually, we were dealt a gift, and it was in the UK, we've got the Financial Conduct Authority and the Bank of England. They basically perform different aspects of regulating the financial markets. And they had teamed up in order to do what they called a survey of the industry around the usage and application of machine learning. And the reason this was a gift was because, when, someone like myself can walk around holding a piece of regulation and say, hey, I need to do this because the regulator it's not because I'm being a bad guy and I'm being a pain in the ass. So the regulator's telling me I need to do this. Suddenly it gives me permission to find out everything that's going on that it was more difficult. And so suddenly, 4 months of like really struggling to understand the extent of all the projects. Within the next 3 weeks, we had a list of 60 projects, and everyone was very forthcoming. And it suddenly enabled us to get a visibility into things, and particularly in terms of the risk and the controls that were in place, or were not in place. So we submitted the regulatory response, and I signed off on that. But also we realized that the financial regulators were likely to continue to do this on an annual basis, because what they were concerned about was systemic risk within the financial industry. What if lots of banks are all doing some crazy thing with some vendor solution that goes wrong, and then the whole banking industry goes to shit? Well, we all know we had other risks that we hadn't modeled. It wasn't machine learning that was going to go wrong, that was going to take out the financial industry. We could see very clearly that the FCA was going to ask this on a regular basis. And so that gave us a second opportunity, which is to say, look, let's get on the front foot now. We know that we're going to be asked this on an annual basis. Let's put in place some basic things to make sure that we're not just like causing a fire drill every single time we need to ask you for an inventory of our models and an inventory of our risk management. So we put together some I would say loose requirements day one, and the result predictably was a lot of Excel spreadsheets for people to fill in. And I said this to Luke, the CEO guy at Dot Science a few months ago, that if some people measure their success in life by positive karma or something like that, or some people maybe measure their success in life by carbon footprint. Do you have a negative carbon footprint? If you are, then when you die, you've been a net contributor to the species. In my case, I measure my success in life by, have I eradicated more Excel than I've created? Unfortunately, in my time with Fidelity, I was a bad person, because I created more Excel than I got rid of. Because actually, it's kind of nuts. We're doing AI reporting in Excel. It beggars belief. Anyway, that was the situation. The best we could do.